Hello, ladies. Welcome back to another episode of Menopause Reimagined. Today, we are going to be talking about periods and cycles and what happens to us during the month when we go from the different phases that bring us to actually bleeding, to having our period. It's a great interview, great information that was shared. And also, if you have daughters, granddaughters, nieces, anybody that you think that would benefit from the information, it is a great interview to listen to together with someone else so that you can take in the information as a team. And then you can also learn from this amazing expert that we had on. So I'm excited to introduce you to her. Before I bring her in, I'm just going to do a quick intro to who I am. My name is Andrea Donsky. I'm a nutritionist for more than 20 years. I'm a menopause educator and a 7-time published menopause researcher. I'm also the co-founder of wearemorphus.com, a company that helps to empower you to take control of your health and symptoms now that you're in perimenopause and menopause. And talking about research, we have 15 surveys on our website right now. I would love you to fill them out. I put a link to them below because when you fill them out, we hear your voice. We hear what you are going through and your voice matters. So please take a moment to fill out the research surveys because we are going to continue publishing our research and it's very important information. So thank you for that. Today I'm speaking with Alyx Coble Frakes. She's a women's health entrepreneur, speaker, and founder of The Agenda, a platform dedicated to helping women harness hormonal intelligence to improve their health, relationships, and productivity. With a background in coaching and years of research in hormonal wellness, Alyx translates complex science into practical tools that empower women, especially those navigating perimenopause and beyond, to thrive in every area of life. She's been featured on NBC, CBS, and USA Today, and is passionate about shifting the conversation around cycles and menopause from taboo to transformative. Now, here's Alyx. Welcome to Menopause Reimagined, Alyx. So today we're going to talk
Thank you so
about
much for having
periods
me. I'm
and
excited to be here
cycles
today.
and everything we did not learn about in school, pretty much.
Pretty much, yes. When I finally stumbled into this work, I was like, am I late to the party? And turns out no one was at the party.
I'm telling you, like we were not there. It's like, it's so funny. I wonder, like thinking back, and now it's a little bit better.
We
I
were
mean,
not there.
my youngest is 14, and I know in elementary school they do learn about cycles and they learn about their periods, and it's a little bit better. But like growing up as a Gen Xer, I don't even remember any discussion around it. Like my mother gave me a book, and that book included like a book on sex. It was like a book, and that was the extent that I knew about my menstrual cycle. So I think like let's go back in time. Let's have a history lesson and actually understand what that menstrual cycle is. And also this podcast today, ladies, is me very helpful if you're in perimenopause. And then also if you have daughters and you have like nieces, like share this, granddaughters, share this podcast because it's something that you are going to want to share in order to help the younger generation as well.
Yeah. Totally. I think my health class was slightly better than yours. I remember the only activity we did was like we got to shoot a tampon across the room to see who could shoot them the furthest. So like that was my teacher's way of like breaking the ice on the conversation is we all lined up in a row and see who could like shoot a tampon the furthest across the room. But I had already started my period by that point, and so I really felt like I was going in blind because I started my period before that class. So I never got that information, and because my mom didn't talk about it with her mom because her mom had died of ovarian cancer when my mom was in high school. My mom was like, here's a box of tampons. Good luck. And I didn't know you had to take the applicator out because I was 10 when I started my period. So I read the instructions and I looked at the diagram, but the diagram didn't say remove the applicator because to an adult person, that's just common sense. I was 10 years old. I'd never had a period before. I never used a tampon before. And so it was not common sense to me. So I spent the first 6 months of my menstruating life attempting to use cardboard tampons with the applicator still inserted. And they are not very they don't really absorb much with the applicator with the applicator. As it turns out, yeah, don't really work very well. So I think that is like that feeling of being disconnected, of not really knowing what's going on, of also from the very beginning, because I'm working on my book right now, but just like looking back, I knew it was terrible to get a period. I didn't know why. I just knew it was terrible. People on the bus were talking about it. I was like, this has got to be horrible. No one's having a good time. The boys are saying the girls are mean. This has got to be something I don't even want to know about. when it turns out like our menstrual cycle truly is our superpower. It is a way to understand us. There's so much new research right now. We know women's brains are different because of how estrogen relates to our memory, to our cognition, to every single way that our brain functions and our body functions. We are four different people throughout the menstrual cycle. And instead of this being as something women are crazy or hormonal or irrational, understanding that we are beautifully and intelligently designed this way changes the way that you approach yourself in every aspect of your life, right? So that's the reclamation we're here for all of our daughters. I have a daughter as well, and that's the life that we want for all of them is like, no, you're not crazy, you're not stupid, you're not less than, is actually you're incredibly powerful when you understand how to work with your biology. And so I'd love to just give like a little recap, and this will also be helpful for people in menopause too. So perfect. So this is the way I love to, if you're like never gotten into the cycle before, maybe you've heard of the four words, but maybe you have no idea. This actually comes from the Red School in UK, but they talk about the season, our menstrual cycle phases as the four seasons. This gives us a really great way to digest and understand almost instantly what our bodies need as we move through these four internal phases. So the first phase of our cycle is our period. That's the first day where you need a period product. This is the time where you're going to feel your energy kind of sink as your hormones are at their lowest point. If you are postmenopausal or pregnant and you want to tap into that feminine wisdom, track with the phases of the moon. So our period lines up with the new moon energy in the planet, right? So we're at our lowest point. Everything is kind of like hits this place of deep rest. So when you think about your period, you're like, okay, what do I need to do when it's cold outside in the winter? I want to have warming foods. I want to feel maybe snuggled up with a book. I want to have some time to be quiet and maybe have some solitude. Our bodies love to do that during our period. This is a great time for planning because we have more communication between the hemispheres of our brain. So it's a good time to see the big picture and tap deeply into our intuition because indigenous cultures throughout the world have understood that women did not need to go into sweat lodges because their body was the sweat lodge. There's this the portal that opens between life and death happens on our period. And so women receive intuitive wisdom when they take the time to slow down. We receive downloads. And so this is what we'd always recommend. If you've got a big life choice to make it after you've bled on it. Like take it into a meditation on your period, sit with the information, see what comes up for you, and then make that decision. And you're going to feel a lot more grounded about it. So that's the first phase.
So hold on. So let me just sort of recap. So you're saying when we are on our period, so that could be 7 days. Let's say on average, is it about 7 days that when we have our period?
3 to 5, but yeah, it can
Can
be
be up
up
to
to seven.
seven. Okay.
Yep.
So when we have our period, that is a good time to make
Yeah.
decisions. So okay. All right. I like that. That's actually really interesting because, and I
Yes.
know that there's like different times in our cycle. And what's interesting too is that if men actually knew what a woman, like the different phases a woman goes throughout her month, it would be so great for relationships as well.
We have a tool that we made. Is actually it's called the cycle sticker. We call it the marriage saver. It's just like is this window cling that goes up on your mirror where you brush your teeth and there's an arrow and you move to what
That's
phase you're
awesome.
in
I
and it
love
gives
it.
the man a tip for what you will need,
I
like your
love it.
mind and body, what you'll need during this phase. Yes, yeah, and my partnership now I'm engaged and we spend
Amazing.
so much time planning our life with my menstrual cycle because he wants the best version of me when we're gonna like go do tough stuff with our kids or with the in-laws or whatever. And so it only behooves him to pay attention. He gets a much better version of me and he knows what he's signing up for when we go to do stuff because he's like, that's the only thing that makes sense. My hormones are
Hmm.
the same every single day. Yours change every single day. And so you have to really give the preferential treatment to the person who is not the same every day. That only makes logical sense from like a systems perspective.
Yeah, and it's good for planning too. Like I love that from the relationship standpoint, but also from planning from
So
a
that,
standpoint for us. And
yeah,
okay, so let's move on to the next one. I'm gonna have so many questions. So let's move on to the next one.
yes. Okay. This is perfect. This is perfect. So then the follicular phase is our next phase. So this is when estrogen's on the rise, follicle stimulating hormones on the rise. So we have a lot more social energy. So I call this phase of our cycle the pro-social orientation, because when we look anthropologically, when we look geopolitically, like this is the time when women really say yes very easily, and this can bite us in the ass later in the cycle. But it's easy for us because we have all of this estrogen to be like, oh, don't worry, I've got it, no big deal. Like we're like our bright and shiny selves, and then that can get more complicated as you get into perimenopause when you spend less time in a pro-social orientation.
Oh yeah.
Right? We see this creating conflict in menopause and in perimenopause because women are acting more, honestly, like men. Men are almost always in a pro-self orientation with their hormones. Their hormones are always turning them back into themselves to see what they need. Women, when we start to do that more, somehow all of a sudden men don't like that too much. I'm like,
That's
yo,
so
you've been
funny.
acting like this the whole time. So those are interesting dynamics. So yeah, the follicular phase is a good time for doing the plan that we just made. I used to get into this mistake, and I'm sure people will resonate with this when they hear it, but I would be tired and feel miserable on my period. And so Alyx in the follicular phase would start planning everything with everybody. Oh my God, yes, I'll do that. We can do this. And by the time I actually go to those
Ah.
events 3 weeks later that I planned in the follicular phase, I no longer want to do them because my period's about to start. So this chick does not get a hold of your calendar. You will regret it every time. She will say yes to too much. She is the busy bee. She goes to do that. So like think of what you want to do in the springtime, and this is also the waxing moon time. So when the moon is starting to get larger in the sky, if you're menopausal. So this is like that up current of energy because of everything that's going on biochemically for us. So this is a great time to, if you sat down and
Okay.
made your plan on your period, now you go do the plan that you made. And because it's our inner springtime, it's like, okay, this is a good time to be busy, to go to new meetings, to go meet people, to launch something in our business, to have conversations that maybe feel tricky in other phases because we have so much extra estrogen and pro-social behavior that we will explain ourselves in the most nice way possible, which is very good for wanting results. Because if the luteal phase is yelling at everyone, that doesn't always get the best results.
Okay, so the follicular phase is after you've had your period. So this is after the three to
Yep.
5 to 7 days, your period's done. And I just
Yep.
want to be clear also as to what a period is. So, like, actually, someone was just asking me the other day, they were like, oh, they have brown blood before. Is it when they have the red blood? Like, maybe let's explain exactly what that means to be on your
Yep.
period.
Yep, it means the first day that you need a period product. So not the brown blood, it's the first day of that fresh, like red flow that is coming out, and where you'd actually not just like wipe and have a little bit of the brown, where you actually would need a pad or a tampon or a cup or something like that. And then these words get confused a lot too. So cycle really means day one of your period all the way to day one of your next period. But sometimes people will think cycle means just the 5 to 7 days on your
Mm,
period.
I like
And
terminology.
that's different. Yeah, all the different terminology. So when we talk about cycles, that's from day one to the next day. So around 28 to 35 days is pretty
Mhm.
common. Um, and yeah, and then like each of the four phases has their different
And what is
parts.
the brown blood that comes before? And why is it not counted?
So that can be a sign of of having low progesterone. So your progesterone is the thing that keeps the endometrium lining in place while our body prepares for a potential pregnancy. And so when we have too high of stress, so this happens a lot in perimenopause, that will mess with our progesterone production, and it starts like slipping its grip, like it can't hold on to the lining. And so that's when we see that shedding of brown blood that can happen for a couple of days. So that's a good indicator, not to get super freaked out, but it's a good indicator like, I think I'm probably carrying a little excess cortisol right now. That's definitely messing with my progesterone.
Interesting. And that's interesting too for women who are in perimenopause because maybe speaking to your doctor or healthcare provider about maybe looking at some progesterone to help. So that's like actually a good indicator of something that you
Yes.
might need some progesterone support.
Absolutely. And it's the first one that starts to get messed with during perimenopause is our progesterone levels, which is why women typically can't
Anxiety,
sleep. They start to get
mood.
brain fog, higher rates of stress,
Yeah.
anxiety. All of those are related to progesterone and not having the right levels because that
Yeah.
cortisol literally just starts to shut it off. Like it just starts to tank it. So that's why during perimenopause, we get that microscope to really see what's working for me and what is not working for me. It's not that we go crazy during perimenopause, is that we come into clarity in a way we never have before because we have less of that pro-social, which is kind of forcing us to look out for everyone else, and more into the, is this really working for me? Is this really something I still want to participate in?
And I love that. Oh, sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead. Okay. So, and I love that we're
Oh
able
no,
to have
you're
a
good. You're good.
sign of something that we can actually look at. So, like a lot of the times we're like, well, how do we know? And how do we know? And I took progesterone for years and years and years because I have PCOS and I used it to help me with fertility and when I got pregnant. So, I'm a big fan of progesterone. So, definitely, I love the
Yeah.
idea. What you're saying, Alex, is that you can actually tell. So, I think that's amazing. All right. So, let's move on to the next phase.
Yes. And that's something I love to like sprinkle in through all of these conversations is like whenever we're like who benefits from me not knowing this information? Who is benefiting me from me not understanding that this spotting is a progesterone deficiency? Like, the people who want to sell us lots of drugs, the people who want to sell us different like equipment or different drugs or different medications, right? Like there's a lot of stuff that is shrouded in mystique about women's health almost intentionally. Like we
Mm,
always kind of hear,
mm.
well, this is like really complicated. Women are just like really complicated. Like, no, we're not. You just don't want to study us and you don't want to get your head out of your ass. So we're not that complicated. It is just, it's like, it's this
Right.
intentional
Hmm.
thing to keep women kind of stuck in this spot. Right. And so I just want people to think about like when my only treatment option is a hysterectomy, who's benefiting from that? When my only treatment option is birth control pills, who's benefiting from those medical choices? Who is actually directly benefiting from
And what's interesting too is because I'm almost wondering, like, as you're saying that, I'm like, is that why we don't learn about it as much as we do? Or maybe I'm like, what the? Like,
absolutely, absolutely, because so when you can always tell when something doesn't benefit men because of how they respond to it. So they've tried for a long time to get to market male birth control. Men will not take it because of the side effects. The side effects for
hmm.
male birth control are the same side effects for female birth control.
Ugh.
But they will not accept that risk on their bodies as a population, but they think it is just fine for us to do. They don't want to talk about period leave because when women actually work with their phase of their cycle, when they have that flexibility, I was had a back injury, but also was on my period. I was laid out flat for 5 days. I have so much energy right now. If I would have tried to like keep it going, grind through, I would be in more pain than I was last week because I didn't listen to my body. So it's always like, who is benefiting from me
Hmm.
abandoning my care? Who is benefiting systemically from me not getting the support that I want, from me not
Yeah. I mean,
understanding my
that it should be
hormones?
taught in school like that. Your chart should actually be in every single elementary school in like on the globe. In the like literally it should be everywhere because then everybody would understand, okay, here's where I'm doing well. And like what you're saying even about estrogen, I'm laughing in the follicular stage. I'm like, once you get into menopause and we don't have that stage anymore, it's like that whole Pollyanna feeling just goes away. Like it's done, right? And that's why we
Yep.
laugh at I joke around like this all the time with my business partner because before she was in menopause, she was definitely Pollyanna a lot of the time. Like just like never wanted to say anything and was always like very gentle and would never kind of, say she wouldn't want to hurt your feelings and like she would never really say what she was thinking and she was taking care of everybody and then once she went into menopause it was like she's a
He was
totally
like,
different completely different person. Like I actually laugh like we laugh because she's like literally completely changed without her estrogen and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is great. Like she says how she feels, she doesn't take shit anymore. I just laugh because I'm like, whoa, who are you and what did you do with my business partner of 25 years?
so it's so true. It's really because like I've this is kind of again one of the things I'm working on for my book, but like this really like clearly talking about it as like this pro-social orientation. We love women who are doing that, but because again, it's at the who is it benefiting when women are very pro-social? It is
Yeah.
benefiting family systems, it is benefiting small families. Women are still doing 75% of the unpaid labor, like on average worldwide. And it is during those very pro-social years that it's easier for us to just keep shoveling it in. We're like, it's fine, it's not a big deal. And then menopause happens and we're like, that's it.
Yeah, we're done.
Enough.
That's it.
Enough.
And then we laugh because I laugh at my mother too. Like my mom's gonna be, she's 79, she's gonna be 79. And I laugh at her because she'll like walk across the street and she'll like, get mad at a car if they're like not stopped at the thing. And it's kind of like that old thing of like, I'm like, Mom, you're like one of those older women who like get angry at everybody. And she's like, well, no, I'm just saying how I feel. And I'm like, maybe that's what it is, right? Like she's saying how she feels, no fucks given. Just like that's what I'm saying, and I don't care what anybody says or thinks about me.
And think of how we are not socialized to do that. Like how like
Yeah.
abrasive or inappropriate we can even see other women like, wow, I can't believe she would just say that. And like she wasn't being rude, she was just being clear. And we just lose that filter and that
Yes.
ability to keeping the lid on. And so that's something I always want really clear in these conversations. Women are not going crazy during perimenopause. They're getting clarity during perimenopause. They're having more of a realistic look at where their boundaries have been weak, where they haven't been standing up for themselves, where they've been doing everything for everyone else at the detriment of their own body. We see
Yeah,
this.
and I agree. And I think that is where the stigma also, like we talk about the stigma of perimenopause and menopause and not wanting to talk about it, but it's also the stigma around that, those angrier older ladies. And I think that's such an important thing to talk about because you're right. It's not that they're angry. It's that they've come into their own and they're now asserting themselves. And we need to normalize women asserting themselves.
Yes, because we cheer men on who assert themselves. They're
Yes.
called great leaders, so much great potential, great capacity,
Hmm.
really clear. We don't talk about women like that. And so, yes, I think perimenopause is like gives us that permission, should we accept the challenge to really kind of
Yeah,
come into ourselves in that way. So
totally.
yeah,
I love it.
we're halfway through. Okay, ovulation.
Yep.
Pick it back up. Ovulation is our inner springtime. So this is the hot and potent time. This is when where all of our hormones are at their peak. So like peak testosterone, peak estrogen, luteinizing hormone, and you will be feeling yourself. So this is actually what launched the agenda period. I found that I had higher sales during ovulation than any other phase of my cycle. And I found a study of exotic dancers, and they split the cohort into women on birth control and women not on birth control. And the women who
Mm.
were not on birth control all made more money during ovulation, up to 30% more than any other phase of
Wow, because they were in
cycle.
touch with their sexuality.
Yeah, they were
Yeah,
like feeling themselves, right? And you
nice.
also send off different hormones and chemicals and pheromones, so it's harder for
Hormones.
the
Yeah.
world to say no to you. No one knows that you're ovulating. They just like can't help but give you attention
That is
because
so cool.
you're carrying an egg. And they know that they could, like all humans are when we boil it down, we just want to pass on our genetic material. Like reproduction is the survival mechanism on our planet. And so like subconsciously we're all trying to like make babies all
That's
the
so
time.
cool. Wow. Okay. So I love that. Ovulation, better sales.
Better sales, better sales. And it's short, thank goodness, because this is like the peak of our pro-social energy. So every woman you see in the movies who's smiling and perfect and perfectly poised, that's like, I call it the myth of the ovulating woman, because we only want to look at women when they're acting like the five
Mm,
days of their cycle per month, right? This is when we love her skin is glowing and she's so nice and she's so cute. Like that's kind of that thing we
okay.
hold up in Hollywood. And so I'm glad it doesn't happen all the time because we would never get anything done for ourselves until menopause if we were ovulating all of the time.
That's great.
And then the last phase is the luteal phase. So this is kind of into two parts. Ovulation is also the full moon. So like if you're in menopause thinking of like when it's around the full moon, you should feel your energy naturally kind of pick up to that peak. And then when we go down, it's waning on the other side all the way down. And this is the luteal phase. So this is like our inner autumn time. So this is the great time because we've now turned pro self. We've gone into ourselves. So it's a good time for analyzing, organizing. I love clearing out my closets during this time. It's a great time to get everything squared away in my inbox. Right now I'm like there's 82 emails. How long until my luteal phase because I don't really want to sit down to do it.
Oh, that's
Right? So
it.
this is a great time to do all of those onboarding tasks, nitpicky tasks, go shopping for all the winter gear for your kiddos, right? This is the harvest time in our cycle. So it's a great time to wrap up the projects that have been going on. And it's kind of the two-parter because about 4 days before your period starts, your body recognizes that you have not been you're not pregnant. So it'll drop estrogen and progesterone on the same time. So the hormone that helps us stay happy and the one that helps us
Mhm.
feel calm bottom out on the same day. That's a cool evolutionary trick. And so you wake the day where you wake up feeling hopelessly angry and irritated by everyone. We call it the day 24 effect. And so that's that time where you're like, I just like don't schedule meetings with new people on that
Okay.
day just for our own sanity. But I can just like feel it when I wake up in the morning. I'm just like everything's so annoying. And then you start to have that
Mm,
heaviness feeling because there's a process called ischemia, which means your blood vessels start to um cut off and you're get ready for the endometrium lining to shed. So that's why you may feel heaviness in your pelvic region for those 3 to 4 days before your period even starts. And so
wow.
when we look at this, there's a lot of stuff that's going on in concert. There's nothing wrong with the way that this is set up, except for the system underneath our planet is designed entirely for how men's bodies work. Our
Wow.
24-hour work schedule, the way we think about everything, even like the hours of the day, men have a peak of testosterone in the morning, like right before they go into work, right? So, like, our entire
Mm,
modern world is made for men to be successful in. So, there's nothing
wow.
wrong with us. We're just mismatched.
Wow, that's so interesting. And then so what happens then once we go into menopause and we don't have those four different times? We're just constantly our hormones in there are in the menopausal ranges.
Yeah, so what I've heard, because I'm not there yet, what I've heard from a lot of different ladies is when they still pay attention, they can see slight fluctuations because as long as you still have your ovaries, you'll still have a little bit of like that estrogen that can keep moving. I think the progesterone production moves to a different place. That happens, more of that happens during perimen or menopause. And so I've heard people say they can still notice those fluctuations when they're paying attention, but it's just a lot more level. So it kind of feels like a little bit more flattened out.
I've had a
Um,
lot of women say that they have phantom periods once they're in menopause.
that's I didn't hear that phrase, but I met a lady who was like 80 on a plane one time, and she's like, I could still tell you to the day when my period would start if I was still having
Hmm.
my period. I was
Hmm.
like, what? That's so cool. That's so cool. So I think that's why we love the moon tracking too. That gives people something physical to look at when they no longer have their own physical symptoms.
So then once we're in menopause, then the moon can help us. That's interesting. Can you imagine, like, when you were talking about the moon and the different phases of the moon and how we're kind of, women's cycle moves with the moon? I'm like, can you imagine that all women were on their period at the same time? Like based.
That's That's what they used to think. So they used to say like that women would bleed without before there was non-natural light, that we were all bleeding around the new moon and ovulating around the full moon, which I think I've never seen a study on this. But you're getting all my hottest takes today. I think that is why there's so much weirdness around the full moon. There like if you talk to anyone who works at a school or an ER worker, they're like, the full moon, it's terrible. So many accidents, people. I'm like, well, if
So
all the
weird.
men
Yeah.
around us subconsciously know that everyone around them can get pregnant, that's going to shoot their hormones through the roof. That is going to like drive testosterone levels through the roof and impact human behavior.
Wow. That's so interesting. And so how does it work with, our cycles syncing? So like, for example, my daughter plays basketball and she's on a team, and then so many of them get their periods around the same time, or you hear roommates having their periods at the same time. What is that all about?
So, everything I have been able to find in medical literature says that it's not true, and everything that I've had in my own lived experience says that it is very much true because I will pull people to my menstrual cycle. So, I have very like I had an IUD in college and I still had a period every single month. About 10% of people still have their regular ovulatory cycle when they are having an IUD. I'm like, cool, lucky me. I'm like a sincerely too fertile of a person. And so like my roommates would just like start coming onto my cycle. And so that's my best guess is maybe like if there's I mean alpha is the wrong word, but you know that kind of like there's like maybe as someone who's like has more of a dominating hormonal phenotype that they could pull people. But I again, there's nothing that I've seen that proves it in the literature. And in fact, they're like, it's all conjecture. But I'm like, but then how
Hmm.
come every girl I know has a story like that?
Hmm.
Every
No. Oh my
single
God. I
every
remember.
single woman. Yeah.
I mean, I haven't had my period in many years, but I still remember, yeah, like we would all sync, we would have it at the same time. Even my daughters and I would have it around the same time. So it's
Yep.
yeah, it's very like my daughter, she's 20. But yeah, very interesting. Okay, so we have the four different phases in of our of our cycle in that month. We learned what a cycle actually means, which I like. Thank you very much. And is there anything for women in perimenopause that you would like to share with them as they're going through it? Because a lot of the time, because our cycles are so erratic, when we're in perimenopause, that completely throws us off, right? So now we don't have four different phases. We've got like 100 or like you're
Yeah.
going up, you're like kind of going through, you're cycling through them actually is probably the better way to say it. You're cycling through those
Yes.
four phases a lot more often. So you're kind of like
Yes.
all over there. You're just, you don't feel like yourself.
Yeah, and what I would say is my number one step is start tracking and track over about 3 cycles. So 3-ish months. And again, that might get a little shorter during perimenopause. Maybe it's like every 20, 25 days, right? Whatever the case may be.
Yeah, sometimes shorter.
Because right, and then you can see, okay, like some of the stuff we talked about earlier, if you're having that brown spotting, maybe I need to look at progesterone. If you're having like really high anxiety spikes, that could be a progesterone, but that could also mean too much estrogen, right? Like if you're having
Yeah.
your periods come closer and closer together, that can be because we're having too much estrogen dominance in the body. And so
Yeah.
when you start to see what symptom you're having, and you will only see that if you're tracking, then you can seek specific symptomatic relief that you will not be able to get from a doctor unless you tell them very specific data points, because the allopathic medical system looks at us very mechanically, and it's like, well, you have these 3 symptoms or you have no symptoms, or like whatever. And if you can't articulate what those symptoms are, you're going to have a hard time getting the responsive medical care that you need. So I'd really recommend that everyone start tracking, even no matter how erratic it feels, because I would like to change what we talk about for an irregular cycle, because I've heard people say like, well, my cycle always started on a Tuesday and now it started on a Wednesday, so it must be irregular now. I'm like, no, it's actually about the number of days, right? So when we talk about that cycle length, so if it is, let's say your normal is 28 days. So 2 days on either side of that is still considered a clinical range of normal. So you don't, if you're like, hey, I'm at 26 days, then 28 days, then 27 days, then 28 days, then 26 days, that's actually not considered scientifically irregular. It might
Okay.
feel like it if we're like, you have to have the same number of days every single time. That's just not realistic, because stresses, hormones, all the things in our environment can change that day by a couple of days. So as long as it's within that like 5-day window of either 2 days earlier or 2 days later than your normal, that's still considered within a regular menstrual cycle. Where it starts to get like 20, then 25, then 30 days, then 45 days, that's when it gets really, really crazy. And so when you're tracking those, you can start to peel back and look for symptomatic relief that is going to match up with those symptoms. And again, you have to be able to see your own unique pattern. So we'd recommend everyone in perimenopause become a cycle scientist and get really curious about where their own ebbs and flows are.
I actually think it should start when when we're young. You know,
When they're
obviously,
10. When you're 10.
it's interesting because I mean, my girls, they track their cycle. They have an app, and I used to do it in like my notes app on my phone until they're like, we don't need that anymore, Mom. We've got our own app. I was like, okay. So they track it all the time, and my girls know exactly to the day. Like I was supposed to get my period today. Like it is amazing to me, this generation, that they're so much more on top of it than I was in my generation. And I love that they're so on top of it. And the way they talk about their periods, they're not embarrassed. It's like, who cares? Like I've said this so many times, like my 14-year-old will be with her friends at our house with boys too. And they're like, yeah, I got my period, or yeah, I'm getting my period. Or it's like I went for lunch yesterday. Like no shame. And it's the nicest thing to see. So I love the fact that these are girls, at least mine are, and their friends, from what I've seen, are talking about it earlier. They're tracking it earlier. And then that way they're going to be so much better off, because I never really did track my period. So until like maybe I was in my 40s, and by that time I was already in perimenopause. So it was like I kind of didn't really know. But now they're going to know from a very young age. When they start going into perimenopause, they're going to be like, ah, I know where I'm coming from. I see the trend.
Yeah, so I'm 34. I turned 34 in July, and I am a couple months into perimenopause. And I
Yep,
only know that because I have been tracking my menstrual cycle
exactly.
professionally for 6 years. And so I'm not having drastic changes, but I'm having these like, I'm like, there was like 3 months ago, what kicked it off is like I ovulated twice in 1 month, separated by 5 days. It's like I ovulated, had the ovulation pain on my left side, all the fluid, everything dried up. Then I had more cervical fluid, and then I ovulated on the right side. It's like that has never happened to me in my life.
Yeah.
That it they like that it completely
Hard.
everything stopped and then restarted. And I'm like, I only noticed that because of how much I track my cycle. And then my period came 5 days late that month. I'm like, so the progesterone from the second egg dropping kept all of the endometrium lining in place until that other egg had like the chance to work its jelly, which is crazy.
See,
It's
and it's so
crazy.
cool. And you're probably going to teach doctors and healthcare providers. Like by you knowing all that, you can go now to your doctor and be like, okay, here's what I need, because
Here's what's going on.
here's what's going on and here's what I need. And I know what I need based on my 16 years of tracking.
Yes, and that is my hope for every woman is that
I love that.
they will be able to be their own health expert because doctors do not have enough time to sit with you and really go through they just don't. It's not the way our medical system is set up,
Yeah,
at least
exactly.
in the United States, right? Like it's just terrible. And so if you don't come with your punch list and your stuff ready, you're not going to, and like that's why it often takes women 10 years to understand they're even in perimenopause.
Oh, wait, I was in it for 14 years total, 11 of which I had no idea.
Yep. Because
Like no idea.
and did you ever bring different things to your doctor that you then ultimately realized were connected to perimenopause?
That's a great, well, so
That
yes,
happens a lot.
yes,
Yeah.
many things that I had no idea. Like I had phantom smells and I was smelling gasoline and burnt toast and, all these different things. And I remember I had had MRIs done and that was probably one of the first symptoms that I had that now looking back, I was 36 at the time and didn't realize it. And I had a whole bunch of other things going on and weight gain and mood and, all the other things. But yeah, no, and I talked to my doctor about it, but there was never a connection that was made. And now that's why I'm so passionate about doing what I do and the research that I do, because I just don't want women, the younger generation of women, ever having to go through what I went through and really suffering and not understanding. And because even at the time, like when I would ask friends, are you going through this? Is this happening? They're like, nope, I don't know what you're talking about. And so whether it really wasn't happening, I was just asking people who were blessed that didn't have any symptoms, or maybe they're embarrassed. I don't know. Like, so now it's like, yeah, no, I don't want anyone to have to go through what I went through.
Yeah, the women have gone through this huge disembodiment. Like women, and I think that's why we have higher rates of adrenal fatigue, stress-related disorders, anxiety, because women live from like the neck up. We are really taught to disconnect from a very early age because we just expect that everything's going to be painful and shitty about being a girl, like from your first period all the way through menopause. And so we see a lot of disconnection and like separation from women and their bodies, which is really, really crappy because the feminine wisdom is a deeply embodied wisdom, right? It's like literally being deeply rooted into in your own nervous system. And we are trained from the very beginning of our lives here that we shouldn't be connected because you should just accept that everything about being a woman is shitty. I'm like, what? This is crazy. And so I think a lot of those women were having those symptoms and not even realizing it because the state that they think is normal in their bodies is misery. They're just trained that being a woman equals being miserable.
Yeah, that's absolute BS. Like that's ridiculous. Like really
Ridiculous.
ridiculous.
Super, super duper.
One of my most favorite books that I read was called The Red Tent. And the best, right? So talk a little bit about the red tent and kind of how it was historically for women.
Yeah, so I have a really great example. So I had met a woman on a podcast and she was one of the first people that was telling me that indigenous wisdom have been keepers of this knowledge for a long time that women she's from Hawaii and that they would gather and they would have ceremony and they would like have time with each other and it is why men built like their the word is escaping me now. Thanks, perimenopause. They're sweat lodges, right? And they're like the reason that men built sweat lodges is because they were trying to do what they could see women doing in the red tent, this deeply spiritual time, this time where people would bring all the problems of the community to the women in the tent because they would sit through it and marinate and their brains were connected in different ways. Like even if
Mm.
they didn't have the scientific language for all of this, our human ancestors knew instinctively that women were deeply powerful and had a deep intention and purpose on their menstrual cycle when they had the ability to carve out time for themselves. And so when we think of how disempowered women are, when you trace it back to making us hate our period, of course, they told us to like hate the thing that gives us the deepest intuitive insight
Mm.
and knowledge about ourselves.
Wow.
They're like, ignore that time. And it's so funny. And like my personal example from that, I was in college and I was on birth control. And then every time I would do the sugar pill, I wanted to break up with my college boyfriend because he was terrible. Like we were so toxic and he was very, very terrible. And then as soon as I would start up those artificial hormones again, I would stop thinking about it. So
Wow.
we train young girls to be deeply disconnected from their sense of intuition and their sense of self when we teach them that their period is bad and disgusting.
Hmm. Wow.
Yeah. So that's the where I've seen like those red tent kind of the whisperings come from is like, and it's time for women to just care for each other and be in sisterhood and be in community. And we even see that in the modern workforce. Women aren't often collaborating with each other. Women aren't really encouraged to support each other. There's a lot of a closed system because women feel like there's only so many spots for us to be successful. So we fight with other women instead of fighting men.
Let's unpack that. I honestly, because this is one of the things that, so my business partner and I have a female business partner. We've been business partners for 25 years and we are all about supporting women. We are, our story, like when I talk, I don't talk much about entrepreneurial life, but her and I we've had three companies. Morphus is our third company together. And it's always been in like the
Mm.
phase of life. Actually, we're kind of like following our cycles. It's always been in like that phase of life, not really about periods, but like kind of the phase of life that we have been in. And we had
Yeah.
companies and we started Morphus when we were in perimenopause and now we're in menopause. And we do notice that, like, what is it with women who don't like that they don't, not everybody, because we have a lot of women who are incredible and support each other, but I've had friends who have told me who have been in the workplace who had female bosses who were terrible to them, like terrible to them, or women don't want to support each other. So you think it's that they're fighting for that placement? Like, what is it that makes that? What is it that would make a woman not want to support each other? Because Randy and I are all about doing our best. I mean, listen, nobody's perfect, but we do our best to try and support women. But so talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's all honestly it links back to the menstrual cycle. It links back to pregnancy. It links
Interesting.
back to promotion. It links back to when women have like these different like ups and downs. We're very much trained when we are trained that women are weak because of their period, when they are weak because of pregnancy, where that makes them incompatible employees a lot of times in corporate America. We're like, oh, that woman, she might have a baby. She looks like she's 30. She might want to pop out some more kids, right? Like we've got all of these narratives in our head about because of our female reproductive system that it makes us less valuable, which does not make sense at all because men don't go through complete menopause, right? They don't have like a complete andropause where they stop making testosterone. They can still theoretically reproduce for their entire life. Women have a purpose after their reproductive life, which is information sharing, community building, and resource gathering intentionally. Like that's why we're one of 5 species on the planet that has menopause because we have a function beyond reproduction, is what that says to me, like from an evolutionary lens. But because of women, we have like ingested these stories over and over again, and we see the statistics and we see, okay, well, in top CEOs, there's about 10% who are women. In the C-suite, maybe there's 15%, our government's up to 20%, right, of women leaders. And so because we already have believed that our bodies make us less than and weaker, oh, well, then I can't fight a man for the spot. He's already stronger than me, more dominant than me. So I have to fight other people in my category, right? Like I have to gatekeep amongst
Hmm.
other women. And it is the exact opposite thing. If you look at any man, I always say this, they bring up all the Chads and Brads with them. Any man that starts a company is bringing his 5 worst friends, and then they somehow become C-level, C-suite executives in 10 years. And you're like, that guy, Brian, you brought Brian with you to the company? And he's
Chads
like,
and Brads.
yeah,
That's
all
funny.
the Chads and Brads. But women don't naturally do that because of this like internalized competition that we have that all leads back to the cycle. It's like gender inequality is $130 trillion problem in our economy, our global economy, and it is all tied back to lack of support, lack of maternal leave, lack of period leave, lack of reproductive infrastructure for the way the other half of the planet exists.
Hmm. Wow. Yeah, no, it definitely it can be very disappointing at times too. And when you, especially because, we need to stick together. Women need to stick together to be able to do, and especially as we go into this phase of life, supporting each other is to me so
Yeah.
crucial. But,
Yes.
I
But when we especially there's the dynamic between older women and younger women a lot too, right? And where you're like when we have bought into the belief that our best value to society is our reproductive capability, when you can no longer reproduce, that creates some competition. And like both women, like younger women often end up in a pick me role. Maybe some older women end up in a role where they don't like to like give out that knowledge because we both have been trained to just fight each other so we don't have to fight with men. So really every young woman needs like an older mentor who can just help her through perimenopause and menopause and through the world of work. And I think the world used to be more like that, that women would have those conversations with each other.
Well, hopefully it goes back to that. And hopefully for, at least in our community, I've seen like the women in our community are absolutely fantastic and amazing. And so, yeah, I love the idea of mentoring. I love the idea of being able to teach it to the young, the younger generation so they don't have to go through what we're doing, what many of us Gen Xers went through. So I love
Yeah.
that. Well, Alyx, this was a great conversation. Thank you so much for being on my podcast. Can you let everyone know how they could get in touch with you? And then also, I know how they can get access to that amazing wheel and your app.
Yes, check out the agendaperiod.com, all spelled out. That's got our any podcast we've been on. This one will eventually live there. It's got any of our tools, our workbooks, anything that we've created, and it will link to our social platforms as well. So yeah, check out the agendaperiod.com. There's also a link to our free app on there. So for our menstrual cycle app, we help people actually plan. So we take your cycle information and you can sync it to your Google Calendar so you actually know where you're going to be
Amazing.
at work. It gives you a tip so you don't feel overwhelmed or stuck, and really helping women understand that there's nothing broken about their cycle. It's actually something that gives them great power and strength.
I love it. Thank you so much for doing this today.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Alyx as much as I did. I love the conversation around periods and cycles and really understanding the different terminology and what we go through in the four different phases that we go through in a month. So if you did enjoy it, please share it because the more you share shows you care. And please take a moment to rate and review the podcast. I know I ask you to rate and review it every single week, but there's a reason for it. Because when you do and you take a moment to leave a comment or leave a rating, what it does is it tells the algorithm that you're enjoying what you're listening to, and then it sends it out to more people. So I would be super grateful if you can take a moment to do that. I put a link below to that. I put a link below to our products, our amazing line of products for women in perimenopause and menopause, as well as I put a link below to the research. So if you haven't filled out our research surveys yet, please do, because we have 7 abstracts that are published in the journal Menopause as of December 2025, which is very exciting. So thank you for spending the last little bit with me. I know there's a lot you could be doing, but instead you chose to spend your time with me. And for that, I'm grateful. I'll see you at the next interview.